guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be our Zone 9B10A beginning of our garden overhaul. So I want to start this video by telling you a little story. It's one of my favorite things to do. So this is a story about a brand new homesteading family that got a 1/4 acre garden and decided that their very first year homesteading that they were going to do a full 1/4 acre garden, only ever having done raised beds. So what this woman did is she got 22 yards of compost and 22 yards of mulch and a tiller and tilled up a 1/4 acre and laid down all this mulch and all this compost and spent the whole summer tilling and tearing out vines, muscadine, and all kinds of weeds and trees and thorny bushes and brambles and all kinds of things, and getting completely eaten alive by mosquitoes and red ants and every other bug in Florida. And then promptly getting everything destroyed by a hurricane. It was only a category 1, but it did tear down the fence. And when it took down the fence, it took down the trellises. It took down all of my plants that were growing. It took down everything. And so that was year 1. And then I just kind of gave up. If you were unsure, the person in the beginning of my story was me. It was me. So we have a 1/4 acre garden here. It doesn't quite take up the whole 1/4 acre lot that sits on, but pretty close. And I just gave up. It was so much, and I was not prepared for the amount of work that summertime Florida gardening was going to take. Now, I have lived in Florida for nearly 2 decades at this point, and I have done year-round gardens, but they have been very small and covered by nets and very contained, and it has been somewhat easy to take care of them throughout the entire year. I also had access to irrigation, which I do not have access to on this particular lot, other than hauling water myself via buckets. So the whole thing just became super overwhelming, and then I put it down because other aspects of life just got really crazy. So I decided that it was just not my season to have the giant garden and to do all gardening things. So I quit, and it was fine. I focused on some other things in terms of getting the house put together. I had this dream, or I had this vision, and it just wasn't true, that I was going to have all the time to do the homeschooling and all the time to do the homesteading and all the time to do the homemaking. And the truth of the matter is that there's just really not time to get it all done. So you have to prioritize. And the garden just became very low priority, because here's the crux of it is that because I live in Florida and because we have a year-round growing season, I can get local organic produce for pretty inexpensive. So I don't necessarily have to grow it because I have easy access to it. And I know that's not true for most people in other zones. So I'm sorry, I don't know what to say, but it just became one of those things where gardening just fell to the last of the priorities. In fact, it wasn't even a priority. So for 2 years now, it has just sat, and I have gone periodically and buried compost, kitchen scraps and whatnot. So you'll see like there's mounds, and it's really good dirt now. Like you can tell it's nice and black and rich. So that is basically 2 years of amending with kitchen scraps and not tilling. We tilled it the first time because there were tons of vines. Like this was covered in wild blackberry brambles that weren't fruiting because they were so huge, and also covered in muscadine and invasive grasses, basically. So the plot itself, the garden plot itself, I think is 20 by 60. And we reduced that to, when I was talking to my husband about it, I was like, I really feel the call to get into gardening and to just get really good at doing like 1 or 2 different plants and not being overwhelmed by it. And I think that was like, I'm ambitious. I want to do all the things all the time, and I want to be good at them. And so when I started the garden, I was like, oh yeah, it'll be no problem. I'll have these beautiful rows I'll do hugelkultur and no-till, and it'll be fine. And then reality just slapped me right in the face. And it's funny how, you know, reality and the Lord work like that. So it just it all fell to crap basically. And it just was such a low priority that it wasn't something that I was focused on doing. So now that I have a little bit more time because my home is better organized and more in order, and I'm less focused on like just the daily home projects because I have a good handle on that, it was time to overhaul at least part of the garden. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the size of the plot that we picked to overhaul, the plants that we're going to be putting in here, and then the tropicals that we're starting. So if you were unaware, zone 9 and 10, I'm right on the line in between the two. Right now we're at basically we're getting very close to the end of our summer growing season. So daytime temperatures right now are reaching about 80 for me, and nighttime it's not really falling below 60, although tonight it's actually supposed to get quite chilly. But for the most part, nighttime temperatures aren't really dropping below 60 anymore. And we're starting to get into the pattern of daily afternoon storms. We haven't had much rain at all, so we have a lot of prescribed burns going on around us, which is excellent land management. I'm so thankful that Florida does that. That stops wildfires from becoming a huge problem. So anyways, we're starting to get into our daily storms. We just had an afternoon rain the other day, and that's kind of the signal that the summer weather pattern is going to start picking up. And I don't know, this year might be a little bit drier than previous years, not 100% sure. So with that in mind, I just did not want to take on a huge 40 or 20 by 60 garden with 20 rows and blah, 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 just because I don't have irrigation out this way yet. So this lot is next to the lot that our house sits on, and there is a spigot, but it runs through our water softener, and our water is spring fed. So it's good water to begin with lots of good minerals and solids. But then when we run it through the softener, it adds quite a bit of salt, and I don't want to put that onto the garden. So I'm having to take water from the well directly, which means carrying buckets of water. And it's just not in the budget right now to get a garden well dug because they're pretty expensive. So that's not a thing that's going to happen. So I just need to be really realistic with myself. And when I was talking to my husband about it, he was like, you know, you don't have to do all the things. You can just get really good at like one thing. And I was like, you know, you're right. Let me get really good at growing one thing. And so I picked tomatoes. This year I'm going to do tomatoes. And it's a little late to start tomato seeds for me. I should have probably started them about a month ago, but honestly, a month ago, I didn't know I was going to be doing this. So what I am doing here is my husband laid down a bunch of cardboard in the walking paths. It will not stop the weeds. It will only slow them down. Here in Florida, it's just not a thing. Crabgrass grows straight through this cardboard. It will stop the other weeds though. So all I'll have to do is pick grass, which is still super annoying, but at least it's less weeding. And then we have probably about 5 yards of wood chips mulch still sitting out by the road. So that's what I was doing. I think I hauled 4 or 5 loads by hand, and then my husband did the other 4 or 5 loads by hand. And now I'm just spreading them out into the paths. The beds themselves have already been composted and mulched, but you probably saw me go and grab the shovel there, and I was just amending the beds that I'm planting in by grabbing some of that amended soil from other rows that I'm not going to be working on this year. And I am also assuming that over the next couple of years, as I just get good at doing a couple things, that I will extend these rows. I will work on continuing to amend and burying kitchen scraps in the other rows that are not inside the fencing. So all I'm doing here is just digging a little trench and kind of burying some of that compost that I amended earlier in the year. So just trying to build up some little mounds here because this is where I'm going to be planting tomato seeds. And like I said, I started these seeds pretty late. I probably should have started them back in like December and let them go inside until they got big enough. So I'm just experimenting a little bit. I did end up going to Lowe's and getting a couple of plants at Lowe's, which is fine. I'm not opposed to it. They're expensive though, getting them from the big box store versus starting them from seed. But I just don't have time to start some of them from seeds. So I did get a couple tomatoes at Lowe's and some peppers as well. So peppers will do real well here, and some tomatoes will do really well. Like the cutting tomatoes and the Roma tomatoes will do really well over the winter as long as you can keep them warm enough, because we do get some pretty chilly nights close to freezing. But by now, it's kind of the end of their, well, sorry, technical difficulties. My mic died, so I had to go charge it and get a new one. Anyways, as I was saying, it's the end of our like spring season / summer season growing. So a couple things will still do pretty well here over our summer, but we are starting to get into monsoon. We're starting to get into the day into like the high 80s, low 90s during the day. It's not really dropping below 60 or 70 at night, so just really pushing the comfort zone of any of the spring stuff, plus a lot of pest pressure. So all I'm doing here is grabbing some of that amended soil from previous rows and dragging and dropping it over here into where we're going to be putting in the tropical crops, and I'm just going to experiment with a couple of things. Trying a bunch of different tomato starts. I already have the seeds for them. We did not spend any money on this project other than just a couple things at Lowe's, like some plants that I knew were going to do just fine over our summer, and also a couple of things that I got at Ace Hardware, at our local Ace, because they were on clearance. I wouldn't have bought them if they weren't cheap. But literally just reusing what we already have here on hand. We have a ton of gardening supplies from previous gardens, and just no point in spending money on something that it's just sort of experimental. If it was much harder for me to get a hold of good organic local food, I would spend a lot more effort on this project, but it's just not that difficult right now. So I figured I would just use the next few months as a learning curve, a learning experience for myself, and try to figure out what's working, what's not working, what varieties are doing well, what's not doing well. And so here I'm just raking out the mulch. We still had, we have about 5 yards of mulch sitting out by the road that's like all overgrown. Wait to see what this looked like before. I'm actually going to show you. I don't know why I didn't take a video of this, but I should have videoed how long it took us to pull all the weeds out of this. It was crazy. So did all that work tilling it and getting it all weed free, and then we let it go for 2 years and the weeds completely took back over. So all this is here is this just rabbit fence from Lowe's that we got several years ago for a different garden, and it has held up really great to the wind and the weather and the heat. So I would definitely recommend the Lowe's rabbit fencing if that's the sort of fence that you're looking at. We also have a bunch of cattle panel and some chicken wire, but because we didn't want the structure to be, I didn't want the structure to be permanent quite yet, since it is experimental. I just opted for what we had on hand, and I didn't want my husband to have to go through the trouble of stringing up cattle panel, which is kind of difficult to work with, or anything like that, just on this sort of experimental thing. And this fence, this rabbit fence, is only 4 feet tall. It is not going to stop the raccoons. It's not going to stop the squirrels or the rats. It will stop rabbits if we stop them from chewing through it. It'll stop turtles. It'll probably stop armadillos and maybe possums. And it will deter the deer. It will not stop the deer, because they can definitely make a way higher jump than this. But Florida deer are small, and just a small fence like this is actually a really good deterrent, because they have abundant other options. So they're kind of lazy, right? They don't have to work real hard to get food, because there's food literally everywhere. So just a small short fence like this is usually a good enough deterrent. But a little secret is that you can put in these tomato stakes that we have. I got these at Lowe's years ago, and I don't think they're treated. They must be cedar or something because they have held up great to being outdoors for several years. But a little secret is that I can drive a nail into the top of these. Usually I put a screw in the top of these, and I will just run a string or a wire around the top at that 6-foot level, and then another one at the 5-foot level. So there's fencing up to 4 feet, and then at the 5-foot level there's a string, and then at the 6-foot level there's a string. And hopefully that makes sense. But what it does is it just sort of tricks the deer into thinking that the fence is actually 6 feet tall instead of only 4 feet tall, and it doesn't cost me anything but a really long screw or nail and a bit of string or wire. So it just tricks them into thinking that it's 6 feet, and then they won't try to make that jump, not typically. Also, I'll usually put a trellis in right along the fence line, like in the first bed next to the fence, because the deer can sense that there's something there on the other side of the fence, and they won't try to make that jump because they don't think they have the clearance for it. This has been a really effective way to cheaply keep deer out of a garden for me. Now, this probably wouldn't work with northern deer, but for southern deer, they're well fed and lazy. They're not going to try to make this jump. And if they do, they're going to get real spooked by having the string and the trellis up there. So like I said, we're just using materials that we already had on hand. This isn't anything difficult. We did trellis on that first row with cattle panel that we already had and fence posts that we already had. So we're just kind of Frankensteining this together. It doesn't even have a door. I just have a piece of this rabbit fence that isn't supported by anything that I keep hooking up on one of the cattle panel pieces on the end there. So like I said, super temporary, more experimental than anything else. And this is just to get me good at doing one thing. And I just want to experiment with a few things. So when I say garden overhaul, I literally do mean garden overhaul, because I am overhauling what my idea of gardening is. In my head, I want to be this huge homesteader with a whole quarter acre and a whole quarter acre of a garden and being like completely self-sufficient with food. But here's the thing, it's just not my season of life to do that right now. And I am coming to terms with that, and I'm coming to terms with the fact that I don't actually have to be great at everything. I can be a beginner, just like with this whole YouTube project. I'm not great at it, and that's okay. Everyone has to start somewhere. I'm learning as I'm going, and I don't think that gardening needs to be any different than that. I don't need to be a pro right out the gate. I don't have that kind of bandwidth right now at the season that we are currently in. And it's not even what my husband wants me to be doing. Like, it's not that he doesn't want me gardening, but that's not where my primary focus is right now, because my primary focus is really being his helper and helping him prepare for maybe the next stage in his career. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of showing you the after, and I'm giving you a little tour. So you can see that we put that cattle panel there in that first row. There are a bunch of tomatoes in that row, but one from the big box stores, the big one that you can see is a cherry tomato, and then a pumpkin at the end, and that's a Seminole pumpkin. And then in those 2 pots, one is a Tabasco pepper and one is a jalapeno pepper. Those are both from Lowe's. And then also in the row on the right-hand side is a lemon tree, which I accidentally planted several years ago. And it's about 1 foot tall now. And then there's also a basil plant in there. And then the game camera's in there just to check to see if we can catch anything coming in. So typically we have the game camera pointed out towards the woods just to see what's around. Usually we get turkey and deer. I'm showing you all of the amendment that I've done so you can see how dark that soil is. It's really heavily layered in mulch right now. I'm just going to kind of walk over some of these beds so you can see that we have lots and lots of rows in here. But here's that fence that I was talking about that we got on Amazon. It literally disintegrated within 6 months. I was so disappointed, but that's what we get for buying it on Amazon. And then here's proof that I actually did attempt to garden this whole thing, because I still have a kale growing from 3 years ago. This thing is a beast. It's a dinosaur kale. It's huge. I put it inside a tomato cage because the deer were destroying it. And so I wanted to see how big it would get. I'm not doing anything with it. But it is proof that, and this here, all these weeds, these tall grasses, this is exactly what that end of the garden looked like. And there's Midge. Midge is 14 or 15. She's ancient, but she thinks she is a pioneer dog. So she comes out in the garden with me and she runs around. These are my pineapple plants. They are not looking so hot, but we had a super cold winter. We got down to freezing several times and they did not enjoy that. And also they are super heavily weeded. We need to get them out of these pots and planted in the ground. They thrive on neglect, it seems, but those have been super neglected. They need to be weeded really badly. So all of this tall grass and weeds, this is exactly what the corner of the garden that we just overhauled looked like before we overhauled it. So it was really bad. I had blueberry bushes planted in here and they all died. I think it's because I don't have irrigation, so it's completely dependent on me hand watering. And Florida has a reputation for being super humid, but over the winter we are actually in a drought. So you have to water every single day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. This is a future irrigation pond that my son actually dug by hand as a homeschool project. And then we had to put a pause on it because other things just took priority. So I'm really hoping that maybe next fall he can start back up on this and we can get this irrigation pond stocked with some water and fish. And we're gonna have to line it and everything and then put a pump in. And all of that is very expensive. In case you weren't aware, we have done all kinds of research. That was his, that's gonna be probably his senior project, is building this fish pond and stocking it, and then putting in the pump and the irrigation piping to get to the garden, since we don't have a well on this lot. So it's very peaceful out here right now. We have lots of land. I'm just kind of panning over and showing that we actually have all kinds of space still that we could use for gardening in the future. And, you know, as much as I would love that, it's just not in the cards at this exact moment, which is okay. This is not where the Lord currently has us. Midge saw a deer, and so she is like on high alert. And we have all kinds of deer and other animals in the area. So there's our pioneer dog. She's a Shih Tzu Poodle mix, in case you were wondering. All right, so some tips on tropicals. If you've made it this far, congratulations, because you're about to get some super interesting tips on tropical plants. If you are in a tropical region, zones 9, 10, 11 in the US, then you're going to have really great luck with your tropicals. Zone 9 is going to struggle just a little bit because it can get down to freezing, and tropicals do not love that, but they can survive it with a little bit of care. So today I'm going to be showing you kiwi, papaya, goji berry, dragon fruit, and lemons, and something else. I feel like I planted something. Oh, pomegranates. So here I kind of did this experiment, and I'm going to show you the results of it later, but I started some seeds in baggies in the window in paper towel, and I started other seeds in little dirt pots, and the results actually kind of surprised me. So you'll see the results of that later, but I'm going to grab some of the baggies and transplant some of those seeds into these larger pots, because I was looking at the baggies and I noticed that some of the seeds in the baggies germinated, and I want to get them out of the baggies before they start molding too badly, and get them into pots so I can get them outside and hardened off. So I'm going to be starting with the dragon fruit here. And this was just a white dragon fruit that I got from the store. And I do not love store-bought dragon fruit because they are pretty tasteless, but homegrown dragon fruit are phenomenal. And dragon fruit are so simple. They require basically no maintenance. As long as you have a place where they can trellis, they will just go. In our last rental house, I planted a dragon fruit next to a triple palm that was, I think the palm tree was probably like 50 or 60 feet tall. The dragon fruit branched onto all 3 palm trees. And every time I drive past that rental house, I'm so jealous because that renter now has basically year-round dragon fruit for free. And I know it's delicious because it was, as we were picking them off the plant, there is nothing better than freshly picked dragon fruit. It just tastes so different than your grocery store dragon fruit. But the good news is that you can get a grocery store dragon fruit and you can sprout them yourself so easily. It is literally the easiest thing to do. You can do it in 2 different ways, but one method is definitely easier than the other. So here I have them inside a baggie, inside a paper towel, and I just took the dragon fruits and scraped the seeds out of them and then washed them in a small colander with some water until I got most of the pulp off. And then I stuck those seeds inside a paper towel, got the paper towel wet and stuck the paper towel inside a plastic baggie and put the baggie in a window to get sunlight and warmth, and zipped it shut. So humidity and warmth is what sprouts these seeds. So you can see how absolutely tiny these dragon fruit sprouts are, but the seeds are also tiny. So I'm using a pair of tweezers here to pick them up and get them put into the pot. And then I'm using the back end of the tweezers to make a little divot to put the seeds down into. And I didn't get really great footage of this, so I apologize, but it was real simple. You just want to, the only thing you want to do with dragon fruit seedlings is you want to make sure that the soil stays moist at the top. So I did give these pots a good amount of water to begin with, and this is just a seed starting mix. You could probably use any soil, honestly, though, because dragon fruit don't really need a whole lot. They don't have real deep roots or anything like that. It's a type of cactus, but it's a jungle cactus, so it prefers to be hot and humid instead of dry, hot and dry. So you just don't want the soil to dry out too much. You also don't want the soil to be sopping wet because that will encourage different types of fungal infections and rot. So once you see, if you do try to sprout your dragon fruits in a baggie, once you see mold forming, open up the baggie and get the dragon fruits out that have sprouted. It only took about a week for the ones in the baggie to sprout. Did not take long at all, and it's very warm in my house. We usually keep the thermostat on about 78, but the heat doesn't kick on, and our air is more apt to kick on than the heat. So if it ever gets over 78, then the air will kick on, but it's usually between like 70 and 78 in the house. So, I mean, it's basically perfect sprouting temperatures for a dragon fruit. So this will sprout. I mean, if you have a dragon fruit from the grocery store and you pull all the seeds out of it, you would sprout literally hundreds of dragon fruits so simply. Now, it's going to take you several years to get fruit off of one of these. And you would have much quicker luck getting a fruit off a dragon fruit if you get a cutting of one, which I probably will get a cutting of one just to have fruit faster, but this is fine for now. It's all kind of a little tropical fruit experiment, and I just wanted to see how easy it would be and how fast they would start because everybody online says that it was so simple. And let me tell you, everybody online is right. This was the easiest thing I've ever sprouted. So I'm just giving these guys a good little spritz with water, and then I'm going to cover these pots. And I think there's like 5 or 6 dragon fruit seedlings in each pot. Plus I have other dragon fruit seedlings that I started elsewhere. I'll show you those later. Just covering these with some plastic wrap to keep the humidity up because we do use air conditioning in the house. The air conditioning will dry these pots out really fast, and you just don't want the seedlings to dry out yet. When they get a little bit older, they can handle a little bit more inconsistency between moisture levels in the soil, but right now they really need to stay humid and warm. So covering them with plastic wrap is just going to lock that humidity in, and then setting them in the window is going to help them stay warm and help them get nice and tall. So next is goji berries, and same thing, I put some goji berries in a paper towel, and these I did not wash, and you can tell because the paper towel got super moldy. I should have washed these, but I was unsure because the goji berry seeds were so tiny, even smaller than the dragon fruit. So you're going to see I'm like actually having to look really hard here to see if any of them sprouted. And to spot the sprouts, wait until you see how tiny these little goji berry sprouts were. All I did was I got a bag of dried organic goji berries from Sprouts, and then I stuck a handful of them in some water for a couple of hours until they were nice and plump and rehydrated, and then I just squirted the seeds out of the berries onto the paper towel and some into dirt pots. And again, I will show you later the results of just putting them straight into dirt versus putting them into the paper towels and sprouting them that way. And I'm just using some of this Miracle-Gro seed starting potting mix. Normally I would just use whatever I have on hand, but Ace was having like a mega sale and they had these on clearance, so I grabbed a couple of bags, and I grabbed a couple other things too, only because they were on clearance. I'm a sucker for a good sale. So I'm just getting this soil again ultra moist, because these seedlings, because they're semi-tropical, they need to stay pretty warm and humid. So same thing, I'm going to pick these goji berry seedlings up with a pair of tweezers, and then I'm going to very gently put them into the pot. And these are so tiny that I just had to be very careful doing this. Look at how teeny tiny these seedlings are. They are so much smaller than the dragon fruits. But these had a phenomenal germination rate. I was so shocked when I saw the dragon fruit seedlings germinating within just a few days of planting them. And then the goji berries came up next, and I was like, wow, these did really, really well. I have never had a fresh goji berry. I have only ever had them dried. So I'm kind of excited to see where this experiment goes. I don't know if these will fruit. I don't know what they will do. I don't even know what this tree even looks like, but I heard that they were pretty easy to germinate at home, and rumor was true. These were so simple. So I think I got like maybe 5 or 6 seeds off the paper towel, seedlings off the paper towel, and then I just kind of wrapped it back up, shoved it in the bag, and gave another spritz. And I will revisit this in a few days and pick a few more seedlings off of it. But I have some that already germinated in the pots too. And again, a fantastic germination rate for just like grocery store dehydrated foods or dried foods. Very, very happy with how this experiment turned out. So again, I'm just gonna plop a couple of these into the dirt and sort of just very gently get them situated, give them a good spritz, and then cover that pot with plastic wrap again to keep the humidity level pretty high in there. And then I'm gonna put these goji berries back in the bag. I tossed the dragon fruits. They were pretty moldy. I tossed the dragon fruit bag because it was pretty moldy, and I have so many dragon fruit seedlings. I think I'm okay. I don't think I need it anymore. Plus, these were white dragon fruits that I sprouted because that was the only kind the supermarket had. And I'm gonna try at our next CSA to ask around and see who's got yellow and purple and pink dragon fruits, so I can get some of those seeds and start those ones, because I have heard that germinating or that growing multiple varieties of dragon fruit near each other helps them all do better.
So I'm gonna have kind of bad sound quality in this section of the video, and for that I apologize, but I wanted to give you guys an idea of how I'm starting my tropicals, because we are heading into tropical season here. I know it is only March, but by next month, May, we will be in full monsoon. So it will be very wet and humid and hot, and all of our spring stuff here in zone 10. I'm on the line between 9B and 10A. But all of our spring, all of your summer vegetables up north will be basically dead here. It'll be too hot and too humid and too many pests. So this is a tropical nursery right now, which is technically my office. If you missed my office renovation video, you can go back and find that. We did a complete overhaul of this space. So it is someday going to be a sitting room with a library with built-in shelves, but for right now it's kind of my office / homeschool / where I keep all my projects and art, and now it's a seed nursery. So anyhow, also there's not great lighting in here, so I'm just going to do the best that I can. So I'm going to show you what I've been working on for the past about a week or so. It's kind of ugly, but it is what it is. So right here I have dragon fruit in these seed pots, papaya, lemon mango, 2 lemon mangoes. These are goji berries here and here, and this is kiwi. The kiwi's kind of an experiment. I'm not sure if it'll actually germinate here or not, but we're gonna give it a try. Also in the window there, I have pomegranate seeds. Those are kiwi, and they're super moldy right now. I'm not sure that those ones will actually take. I should have cleaned them better. And those are lemons. And I actually have lemons growing in the garden right now, which I think I pointed out in the video earlier. So the lemon seeds will probably take about 3 weeks, and it's only week 1. But they'll probably take about 3 weeks to send out their shoots. I've never tried pomegranate before, so I'm not sure how successful or not successful. And I have never tried papaya before either. So I'm gonna crack the lids on these. So this is the goji berry that I just opened and repotted some of them. And the only reason I opened them and repotted some of them was because my goji berries in the tiny greenhouse are doing phenomenal. Literally all I did was soak goji berries I soaked some organic goji berries in water, and then I literally just squished the berries out into these little seed start pots. Sorry about that. So I just went like bloop, and so they are germinating like crazy. They're doing great. I don't know if they'll fruit here. I'm not sure. I haven't really done a whole lot of research, but I'm gonna give it a try. These are papaya, no, these are kiwi, and none of these have sprouted yet, but I think I see a little seed maybe sprouting right there. I'm not sure if I can, maybe right there. We'll give those ones a few more weeks before I give up on them. Germination for store-bought tropicals is super difficult. I'm here in Florida, so I can get tropical fruit basically year-round. Pretty inexpensive, but I thought, you know what, why not give it a try? Why not try growing some of this stuff? So that's goji berries and kiwis. These are just little Jiffy greenhouses, and they're self-watering. So there's a little tray that sits right here, and there's like a wicking mat, and then you put the seed pots up on top of there, and you can buy refillable seed pots. You could recreate this super simply. My local Ace Hardware had them on like super clearance, so I grabbed a couple. This is a lemon mango, and this one's doing the better of the two. So about last week I pitted that. So this right here, let me turn it this way. This here is the root right there, and it will send off a shoot somewhere out of here in a few weeks, probably for leaves. We'll see how it does, but I'm just keeping the very tip of it in the water. Like you can see, it's just in the water, and that is encouraging the water to stay clean, and also just for it to send the shoot out, for it to root. This is the second one that I started, and I don't see the little root piece coming out on it yet. So this one might be bunk, might not work, but whatever. It was a mango. I've got more. Here is papaya and dragon fruit. Dragon fruit are like literally the easiest thing to grow if you're in a tropical zone, because I literally just scraped a dragon fruit into these pots, and look at how phenomenally they have all germinated. These are papaya, and I expect these to take a while to germinate because the seeds are super hard. So we'll give those several weeks to do something. If they don't, oh well. It was just a test anyway. So that's dragon fruit. And yes, I am absolutely aware that it's going to take a very long time for these to actually fruit. I think 3 years. Maybe longer than that, 3 to 5 years, I think. I have had dragon fruit grow before very well here. And those are white flesh dragon fruit. And then these are the pots that I repotted earlier, and I just pulled them out of the baggie. I started them in a paper towel. The ones in the greenhouse actually did way better, as you can tell. Just scraping the seeds into the dirt directly and not germinating them in the paper towel, they actually did way, way better. So if you're looking at starting your tropicals, just germinate them right in the pots. It seemed like that did so much better just putting them straight in the dirt. And then Ace had a couple of bags of these left over, and they were super cheap too. Normally I wouldn't get Miracle-Gro, but I couldn't pass them up because they were so inexpensive. So that's that. You can tell the kiwi is molding really bad. But by the time I got done processing all these fruits and washing the seeds, I was just being super lazy. And I did not wash those, but I did wash the ones that I put into here. Or I'm sorry, yeah, into that one. So I'm curious. I bet those ones will actually sprout, and I bet those ones will just go bad and be rotten. We'll see. I haven't opened the pomegranate, again, because those seeds are super hard. I know the lemons are going to take about 3 weeks. I've done the lemons before because I have one in the garden that I started 2 years ago, sorry. And I'm just assuming that the papaya is going to take about the same amount of time too, because the seeds are super hard. The bigger the seed, generally, the longer it's going to take for it to actually germinate. And the smaller the seed, generally, the quicker it's going to germinate. So dragon fruit and kiwi seeds and goji berry seeds are absolutely minuscule, so those popped really fast. And we'll see about the other ones. So that's kind of what I'm doing for tropicals right now. I also have pineapple. I have several dozen pineapple plants. They aren't looking great, but they need to be put into the ground, and they need to be fertilized and watered routinely. Pineapples here grow really great, mostly neglected, but mine have been super neglected and have been overrun by weeds, as you saw in the video earlier. So they're not doing too hot, but I can bring them back. I'm not too worried about that. But this is tropical season for me. So this year I'm going all out with a bunch of different experiments. I have tried to start avocados before with 0 success. So I'm just going to buy an avocado tree. I know plenty of people have had lots of luck doing the avocados the same way that you do the mangoes. Mine just never sprout. And I don't know if that's because I'm doing something incorrect or if I'm just having bad luck with them. Unsure, but I'm just going to buy myself an avocado tree. So that is my tropical greenhouse in a garden right now, or in a nutshell, as I should have said. So let me know what you think. If I could give any advice at all, I would say the goji berry and the dragon fruit were just absolutely seamless, like so simple. It was the simplest things. I don't know why I thought it would be way harder, but it was just so fast and simple. Less than a week for the dragon fruit to germinate in there, and about a week for the goji berries to germinate in there. So, and we keep our house at 78, but the heat never turns on. So sometimes it gets down to like 68, but rarely. So I would say that seems to be in between 70 and 78 seems to be the perfect germination level, like heat level, and then 100% humidity because they're in those little humid greenhouses, and I have them in the sunniest window in the house. And then I was just kind of experimenting to see which would germinate faster, the ones in the dirt or the ones in the bags, and the ones in the dirt are definitely doing way, way better. So just start them right in the dirt from the get-go. Don't bother with the bags. That's my advice. All right, I will see you guys later. Bye.